Developing now, U.S. leaders are expressing deep concerns over a reported joint military training facility between Beijing and Havana. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that he made those concerns very clear during his meetings in Beijing over the weekend. China and Cuba are allegedly nearing a deal on a facility, but no agreement has been reached yet. The military facility would potentially host hundreds of Chinese troops. A senior administration official would not confirm or comment on these reports, but said the U.S. continues to be concerned with China's presence in Cuba. Now, some in the intelligence community see the potential Chinese military base in Havana as a response to U.S. military activity in Taiwan, which is the same distance from mainland China as Cuba is from Florida. Jamil Jaffer is the founder and executive director at the National Security Institute and joins me now live. Jamil, always good to see you. How concerned should the U.S. be with this right now? I mean, how big of a threat does this pose to security?
Well, obviously, having a Chinese spy base, which we learned about 10 days ago, that's been there apparently, according to the Biden administration, for a few years, 90 miles off the U.S. coast of Florida, is obviously concerning in and of itself. These new reports of a larger training facility for China are obviously deeply concerning. You know, China's only major overseas base today is in Djibouti, just off the coast of just on the east side of Africa, the northeast side of Africa. That's obviously concerning. They've got one facility there. Putting something this close to the United States, even if it is just a training facility, is obviously of significant concern to the United States.
Jamil, this obviously comes on the heels of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip. How does that trip factor into any of this? It seems as though the Secretary's trip was successful. Was this an issue that was raised with the Chinese president? Does this news surprise you at all?
Well, I think it's surprising to everybody who's heard about it now. I was not aware of this training facility being in the mix, and so it's definitely news to me. Whether the Secretary of State knew about it and raised it with the president, with the Chinese president, is unclear. He definitely raised the issue of this Chinese spy base, the spy balloon as well, which President Biden now says that the Chinese government, the Chinese leadership was not aware that it was a mistake. You know, there is an effort going afoot, as you know, Veronica, with the United States to try and create a thaw in relations with China to make things better. But of course, the Chinese are pushing back on that. They're going after American spy planes that are in the air over international waters. They're going after American destroyers coming through the Taiwan Straits and cutting right in front of them. So they're raising the tensions, and we're trying to reduce tensions. You know, putting troops or working to put troops just 100 miles off the U.S. coast, obviously deeply concerning and something that's not going to help make those relations better.
But at the same time, Jamil, I believe it was maybe 8 months ago, 6 months ago, that the U.S. reopened its bases in the Philippines. What does that signal to you in terms of escalating tensions?
Well, yeah. No, it's a great point. And, you know, the U.S. has long had facilities overseas, both in the Indo-Pacific as well as in Europe. We've long had facilities in Japan, in South Korea. Until recently, we had bases in the Philippines. And we've had a small training contingent in Taiwan as well. You mentioned that earlier. But the reality is that's all sort of standard practice for the United States. There's nothing unusual or new about that. What's new about this is the Chinese effort to really expand their operations overseas. But it's part of a larger story about China, right? They're going to raise their nuclear force by 10x. They're building a blue water navy. They have the largest standing military force in the world now today. And so that is, I think, what raises concerns. It's not so much just this one particular incident, but it demonstrates a larger story that China's engaged in about becoming another superpower alongside the United States and doing it in a way that might threaten our own national security.
Has there been any reaction so far from Cuba? Is this a major consequence of the U.S. discontinuing relations with Cuba under the Trump administration? Because I believe under President Obama, the U.S. restarted their relationship with Cuba. They opened up tourism again. Could this have been avoided if we would have kept those doors open?
You know, it's hard to know for sure, but what we can certainly say is that they didn't start it during the Trump administration. The Trump administration is certainly more aggressive and walked back a number of those Obama-era policies when it comes to Cuba. The Biden administration now in office could be moderating those, right? And so I think it's probably if the Cuban government wanted to get into a better relationship with the United States, this is probably not the right reaction, particularly with the current administration. Remember, Vice President Biden served in the Obama administration that opened up or reopened relations with Cuba for the first time in 40 plus years.
All right, Jamil Jaffer is the founder and executive director at the National Security Institute. Jamil, thank you so much for stopping by. Always good to see you.
Thanks so much.